So Hegel likewise is very complicated too. These Germans in the late 18th into the 19th century, it's very complicated. But if you remember, Hegel's got his theory of history, which is what we'll focus on because that's sort of applied and still comes about today. Hegel believes that history is a series of clashes between different ideas. There's a dominant idea, what we call a thesis, the challenging idea, the antithesis, and these ideas clash and a new dominant idea emerges. And then there's new challenging ideas, new antithesis, and then it clashes. And this he calls this dialectic process. And throughout history we see these clashing things, new ideas, new dominant ideas merging, clashing, new ideas and dominant ideas emerging. But for Hegel, in this age of enlightenment, and he exists, after it, he exists in the late Enlightenment through the French Revolution. He's in Germany and into the 19th century when he's writing during the era of Napoleon. For Hegel, during this age of reason and enlightenment, it's not that these ideas are just coming and going. In fact, they're progressing somewhere. Humans are, their understanding, their ideas are becoming more profound through this dialectic process. And so, the result is that there will be ultimate ideas that come about. And when these final ideas happen, this will be the end of history. And Hegel defines history not as day-to-day events, but history as this process of unfolding ideas over time, this dialectic, this process basically of the development of human ideas and human societal structure, human ideas about how humans should live, what they should do, how human society should be structured. This, over time, is what these ideas are about. Our ideas are good and bad, and right and wrong, and what we should do, and what not. All of it is related to this question. And so he believes that we're leading to this end point, and unsurprisingly, because this perhaps is the best of all possible worlds, although Voltaire writes that about the philosopher Leibniz, Hegel believes that the end of history has arrived during his lifetime. And in fact, it's arrived in 1807 when Napoleon defeats the Prussians. And therefore, the French ideas are the French ideas of liberalism, of individuals having rights, and everyone being equal, and that this is the end of the historic, age-old dialectic process. Oops. Now, we've seen since then that there's been challenged, but now, do these ideas about liberalism have a challenge today anymore? We could debate this, right? Hegel is obviously an interesting person to think about. But in 1989, when the Berlin Wall falls, a very prominent thinker named Francis Fukuyama, he becomes prominent because of this thesis, writes that the falling of the Berlin Wall is the end of history. That basically democracy and liberal democracy is the final form of human organization. So Hegel is still influential, even if he's, often viewed negatively or as a source of contrast. Okay, Romanticism rejects this reason and the structure and the scientific focus of the Enlightenment. Romanticism suggests that there's more to this world than humans can understand. There's more to this world than math and science can make sense of. There's emotions, there's feelings, there's awe, there's majesty, there's love, there's spirits and God. There's more to this world than reason, cold-hearted facts. And so the Romantics reject that Enlightenment outlook. They reject that humans can conquer and understand everything about the world. Instead, they say that there's things that can't be understood. Nature, for example, the awe and beauty of it is held in high regard by the Romantics. Because there's some things about nature that just can't be understood, such as the beauty of a sunset, or a beautiful scene that one sees when one escapes from these, this reasonable and rational civilization that Enlightenment thinkers are busy creating. Or Enlightenment thinkers look back to history, the tales of gallant heroes told during the Middle Ages. They look at the Middle Age architecture, the Gothic cathedrals with their huge spires that suggest this amazing power and motivate this sort of awe towards some higher being that humans are striving to reconvene with. Many Romantics are very religious. In fact, one prominent Romantic during this time named Chateaubriand writes a book called The Genius of Christianity. Chateaubriand, The Genius of Christianity. And this is in the aftermath of the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars. And so many Romantics say that, look, the problem with this sort of revolution is they turned out, faith, and they rejected God and this spirituality, which is a huge component of human beings. And so we see a revival of the Catholic Church in France after Napoleon's fall. We see a revival of religions and motivated by this sort of romantic outlook that there's more to the world than humans can understand and decipher and make sense of. In other words, we see with the Romantics a decisive break from that trend towards science, towards faith, not in God, but towards faith in science and humans' understanding and rational thinking. We see a rejection of that. Okay, besides nature, besides the medieval ages and religion, what else can we say about the Romantics? Obviously, emotion, dreams are something they focus on. Drugs too. Coleridge is an opiate addict, as many other. In fact, it's during this time they're making big chemical breakthroughs, and so or not chemical, but elements, like discovering different elements and being able to actually control elements. I guess, different in chemistry. So helium gas is consumed, and sort of the lightheadedness that it does is sort of this revelatory experience that many Romantics partake in. So, moving on. Every day, an interesting tidbit.
It's ironic that was achieved with science.
Yes, that is. Some historian, one recent historian wrote a book just last year. It was a big book called The Age of Wonder, in which he argued that Romantics were not actually that opposed to science. In fact, many Romantics embraced science because of its potential to cause awe and its potential to cause wonder at this world, right? For example, it's also during this time that using that helium, humans for the first time are able to float in the air, right? They send balloons up in the air, and very soon, shortly thereafter, they put themselves in buckets underneath balloons and float up in the air. It's very dangerous. Many die trying to do crazy things. But it is also amazing to imagine sort of being the first human being to actually have a bird's eye view of the world, of a town. And that occurs right in the beginning of the 19th century. And that obviously inspires this idea that humans can, take gases and have floating things. Obviously, it's very romantic. There's sort of awe and majesty in that for many of these Romantic thinkers.